attendance. Councillor Wheat will probably be joining us later, and Councillor Simons is at a meeting upstairs. And there she is now. Councillor Gatwood is here. So, and Councillor Bouma has just arrived, so we're just in time. Seeking approval of the agenda. Okay, moved by Councillor Carty, second by Councillor Pierce. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We should mention that now.
Yeah, you should.
Just one comment on our agenda. If you take a look at item 15A on page 5, we're going to delete that if it's all right with the committee, because there's potential litigation issues involved. So if it's all right with everyone, we'll omit that for now. Or Councillor Pierce?
Just a question, maybe we'll do that after we just approve the agenda.
I guess we were one step slow. So,
To amend the agenda.
I'll move that we would amend the agenda to delete number.
Can you clarify that?
Sorry, if I may have been asked to clarify, we had just talked in camera last night about the item. What I had asked is that we could add another in-camera item on 47 Walnut for an update for the committee, if that was okay.
Switching. Yes.
okay with everyone? Thank you. Declaration of pecuniary interest when it occurs, or Councillor Carty, I guess.
We're still deleting that item, then, is that what we're doing? 15A, we are still deleting it? Thank you, Bob.
No, I think we're taking it out.
It was deleting the item listed on the agenda,
Yep,
but also adding another item.
okay. Councillor Carty, we're deleting this item and adding another.
Okay,
So it's just to hopefully get that all clarified.
thank you.
Councillor Pierce had a,
Councillor Gatwood made the amendment.
yeah.
Is there a seconder on it?
Okay, Councillor Pierce will second. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Delegations, down to number 5, adoption of minutes from previous meeting. Seeking someone to move the previous minutes, Councillor Coleman, seconded by Councillor Ruma. Number 6, business arising. No. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Business arising from the minutes? Okay, seeing none, on to number 7. Public hearings under the Planning Act to receive information from the public without a final decision. Now, these will all come up at the next council meeting, January 23rd. And there's sheets at the back if you want it to be added onto a list to get more information on this. So the first one is 7A, Shearcrest Homes, 341 Scenic Drive. And we'll ask our planner to present this item at this time, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The planning staff has received an application to rezone the property located at 341 Scenic Drive from agricultural to rural residential and special exemption rural residential to facilitate the creation of a new residential lot. Property is located on the north side of Scenic Drive, west of Brant Road in South Dumfries. The subject lands have a total frontage along Scenic Road of 83 meters, total area of approximately 7,590 square meters. The subject lands are currently designated rural residential with natural heritage in the County of Brant official plan. The rural residential zone requires a minimum frontage of 40 meters and a lot area of 4,000 square meters. The applicant is proposing to apply the rural residential special exemption to the easterly portion of the subject lands to permit a rural residential lot with an area of approximately 3,590 square meters, whereas the 4,000 square meters is required. The new residential lot would be created through a subsequent consent application. The natural heritage zoning on the property will remain unchanged. A Phase 1 environmental site assessment has been completed and identified no disturbances in the area of proposed development. For the committee's consideration, and included in the package is a letter received from a resident of a budding property at 337 Scenic Drive. It is being recommended that this report be received for information purposes. Thank you.
Any questions of the committee for our planner, Councillor Cardy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the presenter. I noticed on the plan drawing here, it shows the 30-meter GRCA wetland. So the line is at the 30-meter distance from the house? Is that what it is? Or because it runs right through the property itself? So if you see that line where it says the GRCA wetland buffer, so would that mean that it is 30 meters away from the house? Is that what it?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, the GRCA identified the wetland and requested a 30-meter buffer from the wetland, so that second line closer to the house is identifying where that 30 meters sits.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else, any questions of our planner at this time? Seeing none. Is there a delegation or an applicant for this?
Rob Van Porten, JH Cahoon Engineering Limited, as presented by the planner. Mr. Chair and members, it is proposed that we create a new single detached residential lot on the east side of the existing residential property. It is designated by the official plan as rural residential and zoned agricultural, except for one little corner in the northeast corner of the proposed new lot. We've attempted to create two equally sized lots. The planning staff, however, suggested that we just apply the exception to one of the lots, and that was the proposed new lot, so that the existing lot upon which the existing house is located will completely comply with the municipal zoning bylaw. Mr. Chair and members, I can respond to questions. Oh, I should point out that there was also a requirement for an archaeological study, and that has been commissioned. Unfortunately, the white stuff outside has prevented the work to be completed, and it will be done as soon as weather permits.
Anyone on the committee, any questions of Mr. Van Port? Okay, seeing none, we're okay for
Thank you,
now.
Mr. Chair.
Is there anyone in the audience who has a question or comment about this particular application? If you could come up to the podium, sir, and give us your name and address.
I need my glasses. Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Stafford, and I wish to bring up some issues regarding, is there something wrong? You're looking at me strangely. Regarding this, I've already written a letter, and I think it has already gone through, and it is with, okay, I have read the environmental pamphlet. It was a little hard to read, and a lot of, as I would call it, mumbo jumbo, but, you all can call it what you want. It took some time. My one concern is the land that they're asking is not enough, first thing. The second thing, they talk about it being 40 meters. Fine. From the east part of the property, I can see the stake. When it goes 40 meters, I don't see anything. And then when it goes to the next one, which is supposed to be 40 meters again, I don't see anything. It's like trying to shoot a target in the dark. So when you see, this is it, what is it? There's nothing that is demarcating all those things that we are talking about. Okay, this is the year 2018, and I think we've got to talk about the environment more than anything else. One of the things is, let's talk about the sewage that comes. Where is it going to come? Where is it going to go? It's on a higher elevation than the property next door, so I guess it'll just seep into there. I don't know. I am not, let me declare it, that I'm not an environmentalist. I'm not a surveyor, so I don't really know what those things are. I know what they mean. And what about the well water? Everyone on that street is of well. Is someone going to come out there, use the well, and water the lawn with it in the summer? And in that case, the person next door will run out of water. I don't know. So that's why I'm asking. The other one is the impact of traffic. Putting in another house smack in the middle there will definitely increase the traffic. Is there a solution to that? No. A few years ago, I had spoken to council about speeding on the street, and I was kind of almost shut down. But that's another story altogether. The frontage may be legal, 40 meters, but is that in the spirit of country living? You drive down the street, you see huge homes. Is everyone now going to say, hey, I have 40 meters extra in the front, I'm going to put something up there? Is that the kind of worms that we are opening? That's another question you have to answer. And another question I've got to ask is, why are we doing this? When I bought the land, I bought the house years ago, I bought it because it was nice, open country, and I would wish that the status quo would remain the same. Is this gentrification or is this ghettoization? Questions to be asked, questions to be answered. By who, I don't know. And the last question I've got to ask, all this, is it an exercise in futility, or something going to happen? Anyway, that's about all I've got to say for the night, and I hope to see you guys again and get some of those answers that I've asked. I may be right, I may be wrong. Change does take place. and we've got to live with it. Thank you very much, everyone.
Anyone else in the audience have any questions or comments? Okay, we'll ask.
Second time?
Okay, asking a second time, asking a third time, seeing no response. Mr. Van Portman, do you wish to comment on some of the concerns that have been expressed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't get all the questions, however, I'm going to refer to the letter that was attached to the package, and I'll respond to those questions. The first question was environmental impact assessment, as indicated. One was submitted to the county, and yes, it is quite comprehensive, and that's the way those reports are, and they look at the vegetation and the wildlife in the area, and obviously, very specifically, look at the wetland that is in the far corner. And that report has also been submitted to the Conservation Authority for their comment, and obviously, they've come back and said the house should not be any closer to the wetland than 30 meters, and we have identified that 30-meter boundary on our plan. The second point in the letter was opposed to a portion of special exemption. I can't obviously respond to that. That's his opinion. The impact of sewage and drainage. The Ontario Building Code requires the septic systems be a minimum of 50 meters from drilled wells and 30 meters from dug wells. We've identified the wells on the existing property as well as the neighboring property to ensure that a final design of the house and septic system is in accordance with the Ontario Building Code requirements, and obviously that would have to be reviewed by by Andre Gravel and his staff in the county. The location of the well, again, that is dependent and contingent upon Ontario Building Code regulations. A well, normally condition of a severance is that the proponent has to prove that there is potable water source on the property which does not impact adjacent wells, and that's a standard condition and one that we normally would comply with. How big is the house on the property? You know, I don't think a house design has been determined. Clearly, the owner or the proponent is Shirecrest Homes, and I think they have a stellar reputation in the county. Their product is specifically all over Scenic Drive and others in this vicinity. And we know they build a good product and will be well received by the county. The next point in question was, and the initial application was for each lot to be 3,800 square meters approximately, and now one is 4,000 and one is 3,590, I guess the final figure is, and I've explained that it was a suggestion of county staff that we only apply the exemption to one of the lots as opposed to both lots, and that, which results in the submission that you see before us. The minimum frontage requirements is 40 meters. We do in fact have a survey which was submitted to the county which shows that the total property is 83.06 meters wide. I can certainly provide that to the neighbor if or the county has a copy of it, and certainly they can obtain one from the county. Clearly, I don't know why stakes are not evident. However, as I said, we do have a survey which was submitted to the county. As I indicated, the zoning bylaw requires that each lot be 40 meters wide, and each lot, in fact, is 40 meters wide. It's interesting to note, in fact, one is 41, one's 42 meters. I believe the adjoining properties are in the order of 45 or 46 meters in width, so there's not a significant difference in the size of the property, even when we divide it into approximate two. The last point is the impact of being the smallest frontage on the whole street. I'm not certain we're the smallest frontage. I think we're very comparable to other lots in the area. And I think it's important to also note that the county in its official plan deems that this area is a residential area, which results in the submission of this severance. And clearly, if there were other lots of a similar nature, I would anticipate that the owners would come forward, because that is the policy of the municipality. They deem this area, or you deem this area to be a rural residential area, and we're fulfilling that policy of the municipality. Mr. Chair, I can elaborate if necessary.
That's good. Councilor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, just for clarification wise, and I wanted to ask when he was up there, this gentleman Stratford, does he live like right next door there?
I believe he lives on there.
That one there, okay, thank you.
And as I said, I believe his property is either 45 or 46 feet wide, meters wide, apologize, meters.
Thank you.
Okay, that's good. How would the committee like to deal with this issue then? Councilor Bruin? I'll move it. Okay. Seconded by Councilor Coleman. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Moving on to 8A, these are the public hearings under the Planning Act to consider staff recommendations. The first one is John Fenema on 492 Baptist Church Road. And we'll ask our planner if he would present this one at this time, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject lands are located at 492 Baptist Church Road, east of Brant County Road 22 in the geographic township of Onondaga. The application has received provisional approval to sever a surplus farm dwelling with an area of approximately 0.7 hectares. This application proposes to rezone 94 acres of the retained farmland from agricultural to agricultural special provision A-9 to prohibit the ability to construct a dwelling unit. This application also proposes to rezone the residential portion from agricultural to special provision agricultural to recognize the following. First is a deficient frontage of 10.3 meters, whereas reduced frontage of 20 meters is permitted as a result of a surplus dwelling severance, and to permit a total area for all existing accessory structures of 2,592 square feet, whereas 1,737 square feet is permitted. The recognition of the existing accessory structures to ensure that the property maintains compliance with the zoning bylaw moving forward. The rezoning requested for a deficient frontage is consistent with the provincial policies and official plan, as it will result in the reduction of, as it will not result in the reduction of the amount of farmland being taken out of production. It is recommended that the application be approved. This concludes my comments. Thank you.
Any questions from the committee to our planner at this time? Okay, seeing none, is the delegation for the applicant present tonight? Yes, if you would come to the front, please, if you could give your name and address to the clerk.
Carol Fenema, 774 Sawmill Road, Ancaster. I guess we also own 492 or 490 Baptist Church Road.
Okay, anything you wanted to say, or you're?
To the first one, increasing the frontage of the laneway would take away from farmland, and I think we would prefer that all the farmland could be used as much as farmland as could be retained as possible. And the reason that we applied for an increased increased land for the surplus dwelling was because there's a well on the property, and the well feeds the house, and that's the sole water source for the house. And it's in front of the small barn, and that's why the area is a little bit larger than usual.
That's it, okay. Thank you. Yeah, you can resume your seat. Is there anybody in the audience who has a question or comment about this application? Asking a second time, asking a third time, seeing none. How would the committee like to deal with this particular one, Councillor Coleman? Okay, second by Councillor Chambers. All in favor? Opposed? Carried? Thank you. Okay, we're down to 8B. This is Christopher Henderson, 46 Simcoe Street. I will ask our senior policy planner to present this one at this time, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject lands are located at 46 Simcoe Street in the geographic township of Oakland. The applicant is proposing to rezone the subject lands from Open Space 1 to suburban residential special provision in order to facilitate the change of use of a church to a single detached dwelling. A Phase 1 environmental site assessment has been completed, and there were no observed hazards on the property. All of the technical modifications to the interior of the building will be handled through the building permit process. It is being recommended that the application be approved. This concludes my comments. Thank you.
Any questions of our planner at this time? Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Brandon. Mary Hoskins recommended that we get an encroachment agreement, but we couldn't defer this until we had that, or is that the inappropriate use of the planning application?
Through Mr. Chair, I mean, it would be up to the committee if they would like to defer the application to have further discussions with the applicant, but the end result would be that the Planning Act does not allow for conditional zoning, so asking for that as part of this application may be a little bit of a stretch in staff's opinion.
Anyone else, any questions of this application? How would the committee like to deal with this one?
Hear from the applicant.
Oh, yeah, she
Are you ready?
has to come up again.
I believe the applicant is back before me.
Oh, okay. That's-
I'm Chris Henderson of 80 Cornwell Road in Brant County. I don't have anything further to present, but I can certainly answer any questions that anyone may have.
Okay, thank you. Ask if there's anybody in the audience who has a question or comment at this time. Asking a second time, a third time. Got a question from Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we could get the applicant back up, I'd appreciate that. Thanks. I appreciate it. Couple questions for you. One was the encroachment agreement. Has anybody mentioned anything to you about that the property is encroaching on Elgin Street?
Just from the minutes that I saw from council.
Okay. I guess the question is, would you be willing to enter into an encroachment agreement with the county?
Yeah, of course.
Second question, there was a letter in our package from one of the neighbors.
Yes.
You don't have parking at this address?
No, currently there is no parking, but I'm actually in the process of getting a permit to install one.
Okay.
Yeah.
For 2 cars, 3 cars,
Two
whatever
cars,
it has
yep.
to be? Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else, any questions of Mr. Henderson this time? Okay, seeing none. Okay, we'll ask how the committee would like to deal with this one then. Councillor Pierce?
So moved.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Chambers. All in favor, opposed, carried. Moving on to item 9, consent items, A and B.
Nothing there.
Any questions on those? 10A, Brand Heritage Committee. Okay, we need someone to move that they be approved then. Okay, second by Councillor Cardy. Or was sorry, did Councillor Buma rather? Councillor Cardy. Councillor
Sorry,
Pierce.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Just for clarification, this is just for 10A, correct?
For 10A, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that one we have a report on. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. B is the consent item to be received. Now, on your addendum, page 5 on these committee reports, the Heritage one we've done with, there's one on the Agricultural Advisory Committee. Yeah. Councillor Chambers?
I'll move that the report from the advisory committee be received.
Okay, second by Councillor Coleman. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number B part is the Brand Heritage Committee report and letter of January 3rd. The previous one was December the 7th. Councillor Blumen?
I apologize, Mr. Chair, just backing up a bit, because I just saw this right now. So when we approve Agricultural Advisory Committee reports, does that become policy then for us? Good. That was my question, because both of those might be subject to other issues. And so that was my technical question, that we're just receiving them. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Okay, then on the C part was the Brand Heritage again. How would you, we need a motion on that one, Councillor Goward?
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to seek a clarification about 10B. Number one, isn't that the way it is currently, that we have in our zoning bylaw that these type of facilities should be in an industrial area? I'm seeking an answer from staff on that.
Okay, is there
I
a,
know that the growing is different. Growing is in an agricultural area, but this refers to warehouse facilities.
Mr. Trotter can answer that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the medical marijuana warehouse facilities aren't permitted anywhere in the county at this point in time. Only a medical marijuana facility as defined in our zoning bylaw, which includes processing, growing, like all of the scientific side of things. What you see up at Emblem, for instance, that's a medical marijuana processing facility. So they're not permitted in anywhere. Our zoning bylaw is a permissive document. The only thing that's permitted at this point in time is a medical marijuana facility, as defined in our zoning bylaw. So this recommendation is at this point not even applicable if you think of it in that term.
But there wasn't anybody at the meeting to explain explain that to the members?
I don't know. I wasn't at the meeting. I don't know how I can't speak to that. I don't know.
Okay, we are okay on B. Council Chambers?
I will move the recommendation to receive the Grant Heritage Committee report and approve the recommendation attached.
Okay, seconded by Council Cardy. Council Bruma?
I don't have any disagreement in principle. However, if I recall, there was a federal law that passed, I believe sponsored by Peter Van Loan, that already does this. That was passed and received royal assent in the House of Commons federally. So it can't hurt to write an extra letter, but I believe this has already been done. But again, if we're not 100% sure on that, because I'm not, I have no difficulty supporting this recommendation and writing another letter.
Is there anyone on staff that's familiar with what Councilor Boone was referring to at the federal level?
I know we sent a letter. We sent a letter last February.
So your motion is to defer at this time, is that?
No, we sent another letter, sorry.
Okay. So you're all right with that? Okay, any other comments on that one? So a letter will be sent by our clerk. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Over the page. Now these are the staff reports. First one is the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal. Our planner, Mr. Hanson, is going to speak to this if we need to hear from him, or?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a full-fledged presentation, but I can answer any questions if there are any on the three reports.
Good. Any questions of the planner at this time? As you said, there is a page on that and a chart on the back. Councilor Chambers?
I don't have a question, Mr. Chairman, but I'll move that we receive the report.
Okay, it's seconded by Councilor Cardy. Okay, all in favor of that, receiving the report? Opposed? Carried. 11B, staff report, growing the green belt, by our same planner, if anyone needs to have a question or wants to know more. Okay, Councilor Chambers?
I'll move the same resolution that the report we received.
Okay, seconded by Councilor Coleman. Okay, anyone, any questions of our planner? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Down to number C, staff report, year-end stats. There's a sheet on that too, also from Mr. Hassan. Any questions on that, or do you need our planner to present anything more? Councilor Chambers?
Anybody else want to take a turn? I'll move that the report be received.
Okay, second by Councilor Cardy. Okay, 11D. Oh, all in favor, that last one? Opposed, carried. D is the staff report on Valerie Holmes OMB hearing. Mr. Davidson can comment on this if you need any more information. Councilor Miller?
I was going to move option 2. Second.
Okay, moved by Councilor Miller, option 2, seconded by Councilor Buma. That means we send the planning staff and/or legal representation and/or consultants. So we're okay in that. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Number E, staff report, site plan, 10 Marcus Street. Our planner's going to present this one, Mr. Cummins. There is a recommendation on your sheet.
I'll move the recommendation.
Okay, moved by Counselor Buma, seconded by Counselor Chambers. Anyone, any questions of our planner that is, now that he's here? Counselor Gatward.
Yes, we're on E, correct?
Yes. That's
When I
the,
looked at the site plan, I was concerned about where the large vehicle parking was. It's shown along the, I guess I would call that the southerly boundary of the property. And it says proposed 7 commercial vehicle parking, and they're 10 meters long, which is 35 feet long. Some tractor trailers are 53 feet long. And is there 3.5 meters wide each one? And I'm thinking if they park there, and there's existing outside storage right there, how are they gonna back out of there? Yeah, they're gonna hit this. Like, wouldn't it be better to move that big vehicle parking down away from the storage so that they have room to back up? Because the reason I looked at this is because I've seen big trucks parked out on Marcus Street. And maybe that's because the parking wasn't ready yet. The parking lot inside the fenced area. But I guess through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, how many feet is it between where those large vehicles are gonna park and the existing outside storage area there? Because a tractor trailer needs a lot of room to back up.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The provision of parking on this site was unique in the fact that there is an excessive amount of parking required due to the number of buildings on the site. That is, in my opinion, is disproportionate to the amount of staffing and the amount of traffic that you're going to see on this site. All these number of parking spaces are required under our zoning bylaw due to the size and number of buildings that are there. However, in staff's opinion, I believe Mr. Van Porten would agree, the parking is shown just for the technical purposes of our zoning bylaw. Staff doesn't have any particular concern about the location of those larger parking spaces for truck traffic or larger vans or whatever else that they may be having to park, because it doesn't appear that the applicant will require in excess of 40 spaces for their operation. That being said, if it was the committee's wish, we could certainly have the site plan amended to move those larger parking spaces to a more central location where backing in and out may not be such a concern. However, staff doesn't have a concern about the location of those parking spaces. Mr. Van Porten is available to speak to this further, but the staff was not concerned about that location in particular.
Mr. Chair, if I may, so this is all just gravel, right? There's no big lot. So there won't be any lines like there is on the diagram. So the tractor trailers could really park where it was most convenient.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. The applicant is required to show and dimension the required number of parking spaces on the site as per our zoning bylaw. Again, in this instance, staff is of the opinion that there was excessive amount of space available on the site for the size and number of staff and vehicles to be occupying the site, that it wasn't a particular concern. But again, at the advice of the committee, we could ask for certain parking spaces to be dedicated based on those concerns.
Councillor Chambers?
Just for clarification, Mr. Chairman, I think you're getting a little bit confused. The business does not operate transport trailers, 53-foot trailers that are more tradesmen, trucks, state trucks, etc. So the parking for a panel truck or a state truck is a lot different than having parking for transport trailers, which the applicant or the business does not have. And as far as trucks parked on Marcus Street, I believe there are some neighbors that have trucks that are parked that are not associated with the business, so they may be getting confused there as well. Any deliveries that are delivered would be perhaps on a 53-foot trailer, transport truck, which would have to have, I think we said that it has to be internal, so it has to be turning radius, et cetera, and there is ample turning radius to unload a truck, a transport truck. The business itself is not a transport truck, a terminal like Paul's or Bryant's or anyone else's, so you may be confused on what you're seeing on the diagram as to what the business is proposing. You're not going to have a business going to have 7 transport trucks parked in that area that isn't big enough to park a 53-foot trailer.
Anyone else to comment on this one? Councillor Miller?
Very quickly, the 2 big concerns of the neighbors, the fencing, done, correct, Brian? And the second one was they're afraid they were going to use Elgin Street to turn and back in and all that. And I've been assured by staff that, as Councillor Chambers pointed out, a 53-foot doing deliveries has ample room to turn around and not use the current streets for doing that. So from my perspective, from when I see most of the neighbors, I won't say all, but I think most of the neighbors' concerns have been met through this.
Councillor Coward had a...
Oh, no, I just wanted to say I wasn't confused because I have seen those tractor trailer cabs that you can hook up any size behind it on that street. And perhaps I did not realize they could have belonged to a neighbor. However, they were different, it seemed, every time I saw them. So that's why I was concerned about the parking spots. And no, I don't think it's a depot or outlet like Bryant's or Hall's. They're going to manufacture fencing here and bring products in to make whatever it is they're making and take them out once they're finished. So as long as the ward councillors are happy with the site plan and feel that it's a very workable site, then I am too. Thank you.
Anyone else, any questions on this one? Okay, how would the committee like to handle this one? Councillor Pierce?
I move to approve with those conditions.
It's already been moved and seconded. Sorry? It's already been moved and seconded.
All right, then.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Down to number F, the modification meetings. Okay, this is Mr. Trotter has a PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is as the title indicates, a fictional example of some proposed changes that we'd like to bring forward to this committee as part of our providing information to the public and to this committee. I think that we can improve the way we do that, especially with respect to information meetings. I'm suggesting that for formal public meetings, we had a couple of formal public meetings tonight as well, that those remain the same. However, information meetings, I'm suggesting that they would change and be somewhat similar to what you're going to see in this presentation. As it says on the slide, information meetings are not required by the Planning Act. A formal public meeting is a requirement of the Planning Act, and you have to hold a formal public meeting. Council did that tonight on a couple of applications. Information meetings, however, aren't the same. We can bring forward additional information. We can bring it forward however we want to. We have a bit of freedom and a bit of flexibility to do that. They're very good at explaining to not so much the committee, because you guys are here every month, you know what's going on with respect to planning information, but from the public's point of view, it will help explain what some of the information is. The goal here is to improve the information delivery, so I'll just get right into it. The slide background that you see here is a template that I know our communications group has been working on, a template for all PowerPoint presentations for the county. When it's I believe it's not exactly this template, but it's going to be pretty close to it. So this is fictional bylaw application ZBA 0118, and it's for 101 Any Street in Paris, and it's for XYZ developments. So this would be kind of your introductory slide indicating who the application is. Start off with a bit of a map to show the committee and the public where the site is in relation to the other streets, and then go to an aerial photograph. In this case, this is the transfer facility up near at the end of up near Paris Kitchens, up that way. So this is just an example of a property and how we would identify it. Then we would get into the planning framework. So as opposed to having a report, tonight you had application 7A on your agenda, which was a report, which was an information report. This is the information that you would be receiving, and it would be included in your package, but it would just be in a slide kind of format. So we would get into what the official plan designation is, what the zoning bylaw provisions are on that property. Then we would get into the proposal. What is the applicant proposing to do on the property? In this fictional example, it's to amend the zoning bylaw from industrial to commercial and residential with special provisions for on-site wastewater treatment, reduced setbacks, drive-through facility for improved flow, reduced parking, provision for a second floor apartment. Whatever the application is, this is where we would outline it for you and the public. Then we would get into some drawings. So we would provide drawings to the committee and the public in terms of what the applicant is proposing. In this case, it's a high-level pit privy, but of course fictional. But this is the idea. This is in terms of the information that would go to the committee. We would get into what supporting information has been submitted. So we would be telling the public and you if there was a planning justification report, traffic and parking analysis, servicing analysis, and what have you. Then an important slide for us is what key issues do we anticipate seeing with this application? That's not something that we typically do, but it's something that we can express to the committee based on our knowledge of the work that we do. These are the issues that we think might come up with this application. They may not, but we think they might, based on our experience. And typically, as with most Planning Act applications, you get into things like traffic, parking, setbacks, servicing, noise. These are very common issues that we deal with every month at this committee. Then we would get into a slide dealing with timing and next steps. Make it very clear to the public that no decisions are being made this evening on this application. We tell them that circulation has been done to other supporting agencies and department. We're awaiting their comments, and that we'll be back with staff report with recommendations at a subsequent formal public meeting. And then we tell them how we give notice of that formal public meeting. And then we would finally conclude with a question slide. And that's my presentation tonight. I'd like to get some feedback from the committee as to whether they feel this is a good approach. It's a bit of a change dealing with information meetings, but I think it's a little better at getting information in layman's terms, so to speak, to the public. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Gower?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, and Rob, I think what you presented is more user-friendly to the public who doesn't understand the Planning Act or the process that we go through. So thank you for that. I think it's a great idea.
Councilor Miller?
Just to be clear, this is just for the informational.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, and I like that idea because, I mean, tonight was a good example. That first one, I do not believe that neighbor knew that this was just for information.
Right.
And and nobody really made it clear to them, so I like the idea.
Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. If I could just throw a suggestion out there, can you go back one slide? You see how you got no decision being made on this evening? Is there any way to give that a double whammy, like put that on the very first slide and then the last slide?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Because I think that tells them right off the hop that, you know what, this is information, no decision is going to be made, and then you recap it at the end, no decision is
Absolutely.
going to be made.
That's very, very easy to do and very appropriate.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Councillor Chambers?
So if I'm following this through, and then when you get to questions, that's committee questions to the planner,
As they would now, correct?
as we do now.
Yep.
And then, do you then bring up the applicant to?
Correct, just as we do now, just as we do now. Yes.
This is just the report that Brandon or
Dan brought forward, yep.
or Marcus or anybody.
Yep.
Does the little deal, that's what that is.
Correct, yeah. I think it's better for, I mean, in my opinion, you don't have to deal with professional planning consultants that do this for a living. They typically bring their own report, they typically bring their own slideshow, they present to you. It really helps dealing with members of the public who don't deal with this stuff on a regular basis. I mean, we had a couple of people here tonight who they don't deal with this stuff normally, and so it was very difficult for them to even know what you were going to ask or how to respond. So it just helps things move along a little bit better.
Anyone else, any questions of Mr. Trotter? Okay, thank you.
Thanks. I
Councillor
think
Chambers?
Just one more final comment.
Yep.
I think it's great, it does make it simpler. I think the next step is to follow through the process and make sure we do what we do after this in a way that is meaningful and not confusing.
Yeah, agreed. That's always a balance that we have to play with respect to the legal nature of Planning Act matters, because they are appealable. But for this portion of it, I think it's a much easier thing for the public especially to follow. Yeah. We'll commence this with the next Planning Advisory Committee meeting.
I'll move that we receive the report as presented.
Okay, moved by Councillor Chambers, seconded by Councillor Coleman. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to number 12, communications. That's in the back of your addendum agenda. And the first one is Mr. Tony Perusa. That's a name that would be familiar with people if you've been on council for a few years. First Urban. Councillor Coleman.
I'll move that, make a motion to refer this to staff and have a report back at the next planning meeting.
Okay. Okay, moved by Councillor Collins, second by Councillor Chambers. It's referred back to staff for a report. Yeah. All in favor?
I just want to speak to.
Oh, sure.
This has just come to light, it was almost in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And this plant is, this factory is on the corner of 18 and Coleman Street, and it is being cleaned up right now by Boss Refrigeration. They have pulled out and gone to the States, and the new tenant is possibly interested in the property, so this is urgent. If we can get this zoning cleaned up as soon as possible, it would make it that the building probably will not sit empty very long.
Okay.
Yep.
That's right. Okay, 12B.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
You did, sorry.
all in favor? Receiving? Opposed? Carried. And down to the B part, that's also in the back. Ministry of Municipal Affairs, requests for notions of development applications within the Greenbelt study area. Any questions on what's there? I don't know whether, Counselor Miller?
How cumbersome is this request?
That's,
Could we say we lost it in the mail?
Brandon had talked about the green belt earlier.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, it is kind of in relation to my previous report. I've actually already compiled the list, so we're just refining it in order to send it off to the province. So it is a pretty simple ask because we track all of our applications since, I think it's June of last year, June 2017. So we've got the information ready.
Anyone else, any questions on this green belt? Okay, a motion to, okay, move, receive, second by Councillor Pierce. All in favor, opposed, carried. Okay, other business, not seeing any. General Manager's update. Or, sorry, Councillor Chambers?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make the committee aware of what's happening almost as we speak in Norfolk County with regard to some of the stuff we're talking about, the marijuana production facilities and the ongoing cycle of the upcoming legislation. Over the past few months, Norfolk County has had a task force looking into what's going to be coming up with marijuana. The staff tabled a report this afternoon, apparently, on their research into marijuana. I'm just wondering if staff can source that at Norfolk County and perhaps circulate it to us for information. There was an article in the Simple Reformer that outlined what they were doing, and I circulated that to Mark, and he can comment in his update.
Okay.
Sure, so maybe I'll just get into my update now? Okay. Sure, thanks for this, thanks for the setup. Yeah, we've got that, we've shared it with staff. Rob and I have had conversations today about that. He's going to be getting in contact with Norfolk, getting a copy of the report. A couple of things that came up in the article we need clarification on because we had some concerns about, and I think they may have expressed some concerns about the legalities of what we can and cannot do. I've also asked Rob to get in touch with our solicitor to start working on an opinion letter that we can provide to council. Certainly we briefed, Rob and I talked this morning about how we can move forward with getting more information to the committee, and we'll get that to you shortly, hopefully as soon as we can. I do have a question, which we need to get clarification on the recommendation that was just passed on 12A because we weren't quite clear on it. We were asked to provide a report for the next PAC meeting, and I'm thinking the report would be an approach on how we would handle a potential application or potentially consider a rezoning as opposed to actually rezoning it, because the rezoning process has legal requirements under the Planning Act that we'd have to follow. So I think it's just a response to the request, I believe. Is that correct? Okay, that's what we thought. I just want to clarify that. I only have one item that's not in camera. We'll get into the in-camera item for 47, which was part of my update I wanted to get into. But I just wanted to let the committee know that we've had some meetings with Arlington Meadows. There's been some concerns about when we can open up that road. It's currently blocked at King Edward. I forget the name of the road that's connecting through, but it's to provide some relief traffic from the schools out to King Edward. So Arlington Meadows would be, previously may have been known as Grandview or Granville. So we're talking to the consultant today. In order for registration to occur, so the barricades will be removed when registration occurs. Registration currently is being withheld, I'll say, for lack of a better word, because there is a matter of closing some lands and transferring it, which the council's already dealt with, that will then, and it's at the registry office right now. Once the registry office allows registration of those documents of another art plan, it will then allow us to register the balance of the plan of subdivision, which means the road would become public, and then we can open it up for traffic. We expect that the registry office will register within any time between mid-January to mid-February is what we're hearing. So it's taking a little bit longer because it's at the registry office and it's out of our hands right now. And that's all I have out of camera, and I can discuss in camera what I requested before, so.
Okay, so that's the item 15 for Counselor Wheaton, Counselor Simons. We're down to number 15A. It was brought up at the beginning of the meeting. There's potential litigation. So yeah.
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the general manager, if I might.
Oh, before, okay.
Thank you. Before we go on camera, thank you. 12A, you asked about it. The zoning is for our lands because they're saying it can't be next to open space. So are they going to pay for this application to rezone our land?
Well, I think that's what we would probably report back on. We would report back on process. It's our property, whether council would maybe want to pursue a potential rezoning, whether it's premature, if the timing is right, who would pay for those fees, those sorts of things we can report on. And I would think that Planning Advisory Committee next month could give us that direction as to who would pay and if they want to pursue it.
They want to occupy by April 1st, which is really fast, as Councillor Coleman mentioned. And if it was submitted in February, would it be finished in time for April 1st?
Well, if we report back in February, we'd be getting direction from council, and then we'd have to go through the legal requirements of the Planning Act, which would be a 20-day notice period, holding of a public meeting, going to council with a recommendation, and then appeal periods. I would say that depending on where they are in the process, they can make decisions based on feedback and direction from council. Often, what we have told people is that you get to a certain point in the Planning Act application, and then you have to assess your risk. And if you've got a recommendation from council and you're in an appeal period, you judge sort of what has happened at public meetings and things like that, and you can assess if you're going to end up on the board. And people can decide to make occupancy or at that point based on what's happened in the past during the application processing. Okay.
Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Pierce, second by Councillor Coleman to go in camera at this time. Okay.
Sure. You want to turn those off? Okay, sorry.